All right, let's dive into Bitcoin. You've probably heard the buzz, seen the headlines, but maybe you're still not quite sure what it's all about. That's why we're going straight to the source, the original white paper, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system written by, of course, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto. Our mission, to help you understand how Bitcoin actually works, we're going to cut through the hype and grasp those core concepts that make it so revolutionary.
It's fascinating. Bitcoin didn't just appear out of thin air. It emerged as a direct response to the limitations of our current online payment systems. So think about it. Almost every online transaction you make relies on a financial institution like a bank, acting as a middleman. We're essentially placing a huge amount of trust in these institutions to handle our money securely and fairly.
And to be honest, most of the time we don't even think twice about it. We just assume the system works.
Exactly. But that reliance on trust creates some inherent problems. For example, traditional online transactions are reversible, which leaves merchants vulnerable to fraud, and it can limit certain types of commerce. Plus, the system can be quite expensive, especially for those small everyday transactions. Those fees start adding up quickly, and they can effectively exclude people who would benefit most from a more accessible and affordable system.
So Bitcoin is essentially trying to reimagine the entire system, right? Instead of blind trust, what does Bitcoin offer as its foundation?
Bitcoin aims to replace trust with something far more tangible, provable security. And it achieves this through a clever combination of digital signatures and a groundbreaking concept called proof of work.
The digital signatures, okay, that rings a bell. Can you give us a quick refresher? How do those fit into the picture?
Imagine each Bitcoin transaction as a digitally signed contract. The sender uses their unique digital signature to prove they own the coins and authorize the transfer. These transactions are like links in a chain, creating a chronological and tamper-proof record of ownership.
Okay, that makes sense. So we have this chain of signatures. But what's stopping someone from being sneaky and spending the same Bitcoin twice? After all, it's digital. Can't you just copy and paste?
That's the crux of the matter. It's a challenge known as the double spend problem. Bitcoin's solution, a decentralized network. Instead of relying on a central authority like a bank, Bitcoin relies on a vast network of computers called nodes, all working together to maintain a shared, public record of every transaction.
So it's like a giant, constantly updated spreadsheet that everyone can see and agree on.
That's a great analogy. But how do you prevent someone from simply altering the spreadsheet for their own benefit? That's where proof of work comes in. This is the ingenious mechanism that secures the network and prevents tampering.
Proof of work. Sounds like a lot of effort. What does that actually entail?
It involves a computational puzzle. Nodes have to solve it to add new blocks of transactions to this shared ledger, which we call the blockchain. These puzzles require significant computational power, making it extremely difficult for any single entity to manipulate the system.
So the more computational power you have, the more influence you have in the network. Is that how Bitcoin ensures fairness?
Exactly. The white paper describes it as one CPU, one vote. The system is designed so that decision-making power is distributed, preventing any single entity from gaining control. And that brings us to the heart of it all, the blockchain itself.
The blockchain, the term everyone throws around but few truly understand. Can you break it down for us? What makes it so revolutionary?
The blockchain is essentially a public, transparent, and permanent record of every single Bitcoin transaction ever made. It's constantly growing as new blocks of transactions are added, and each block is linked to the one before it, forming an unbreakable chain.
So everyone can see where every Bitcoin is and its entire transaction history. Is that right?
That's the beauty of it. And because of that proof of work system, it's incredibly difficult to tamper with. Imagine trying to rewrite a historical record that's continuously being updated and verified by thousands of computers worldwide.
Wow, this is starting to make sense. It's like a digital fortress protecting the integrity of the entire Bitcoin system. But how do we know which version of history is the right one if everyone is contributing to this record?
Great question. The Bitcoin network operates on the longest chain principle, the blockchain with the most computational work invested in it. That's considered the authoritative version. Nodes constantly verify new transactions and blocks, working together to ensure everyone is on the same page and upholding the integrity of the chain.
So if someone wanted to cheat the system, they wouldn't just have to alter the record, they'd have to outcompute the entire network.
Exactly. They would need an immense amount of computational power to overpower the combined effort of all the other nodes, which is a significant deterrent and makes Bitcoin extremely secure.
Okay, so we've got this vast network of computers. constantly verifying transactions and adding new blocks to the blockchain. But how does that actually happen? What's the process behind it?
That process is known as mining. It's essentially a competition where nodes race to solve these complex proof-of-work puzzles. The first one to solve the puzzle gets to add the next block to the chain.
So it's like a high-stakes digital puzzle competition, and the winner gets a prize.
You got it. Miners, the nodes participating in this competition, are rewarded with newly created Bitcoins for successfully adding blocks to the chain. This process also introduces new Bitcoins into circulation.
So the more people use Bitcoin, the more valuable it becomes for these miners to secure the network, and the more secure the network becomes. That's a fascinating dynamic.
Precisely. It's a brilliant system that incentivizes participation and security through a clever combination of technology and economics.
This is all incredibly insightful, but I have to ask about something I hear a lot about: anonymity. Is Bitcoin truly a way to make completely anonymous transactions?
That's a common misconception. While Bitcoin offers a certain degree of privacy, it's not completely anonymous. Remember, all Bitcoin transactions are recorded on the public blockchain for anyone to see.
Hold on, I'm a little confused. If all transactions are public, how can Bitcoin offer any privacy at all?
The key is that user identities aren't directly linked to their Bitcoin addresses, which are essentially like account numbers. Think of it like seeing a record of bank transactions without knowing the names of the account holders.
Okay, that clarifies things a bit. So you can see the money moving, but not necessarily who's behind the movement?
Exactly. Plus, users can generate new Bitcoin addresses for each transaction, making it harder to track their activity over time.
So there's a degree of privacy, but it's not complete anonymity. That's an important distinction.
You've hit the nail on the head. Bitcoin prioritizes transparency and security, and achieving complete anonymity would require compromising these core principles.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I have to admit, it's a lot of technical detail. Do I need to become a blockchain expert to use Bitcoin?
Not at all. You don't need to run a full node or understand every technical nuance to use Bitcoin. In fact, the system is designed to be accessible even for those who aren't tech savvy.
That's a relief. But if I'm not running a full node, how can I be sure my transactions are legitimate? How do I verify them?
That's where Simplified Payment Verification, or SPV, comes in. SPV allows lightweight clients, like the ones you'd use on your phone or computer, to verify transactions without downloading the entire blockchain, which, as you can imagine, is quite massive.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to download the entire history of Bitcoin just to buy a cup of coffee. So how does SPV work its magic?
Instead of downloading every single transaction, users who rely on SPV only download a much smaller subset of the blockchain, the block headers. These block headers are like summaries of each block's contents, containing crucial information like the block's unique identifier, a timestamp, and a special code called a Merkle root.
I remember us touching upon Merkle trees earlier. That Merkle root, that's where they come in, right? They help condense all the transaction data into a manageable chunk of information.
Precisely. The Merkle root acts as a fingerprint for all the transactions within a block. By checking this fingerprint, a lightweight client can verify if a specific transaction is included in a block, without having to examine every single transaction individually.
So it's like having a condensed version of the blockchain's history. You can trace a transaction back to its source without needing the full, unabridged ledger. That's pretty clever.
It is. And to ensure they're getting accurate information, SPV clients usually connect to multiple full nodes on the network. Think of it like getting a second opinion to confirm a diagnosis. They cross-reference data and ensure a consistent view of the blockchain.
This is all very reassuring for someone like me who isn't a blockchain whiz. But let's go back to this idea of the blockchain, this permanent, unchangeable record. Is it truly impossible to alter? What if someone really wanted to rewrite history?
It's incredibly difficult, but not entirely impossible. Remember, the security of the blockchain hinges on the longest chain rule and the sheer computational power required to rewrite it.
Right, the idea that altering the blockchain would require more computing power than the entire rest of the network combined.
Exactly. But there's a theoretical scenario called a 51% attack, where if a single entity gained control of more than half of the network's computing power, they could potentially rewrite the blockchain.
So it's like a hostile takeover of the Bitcoin network?
In a way, yes. They could potentially double spend coins, reverse transactions, or even prevent new transactions from being confirmed.
That sounds pretty scary. How likely is something like that to happen?
It's considered highly unlikely, especially as the Bitcoin network continues to grow larger and more decentralized. The cost and effort required to orchestrate a 51% attack would be astronomical. And the potential rewards would likely be dwarfed by the damage to Bitcoin's reputation and value.
So it's more of a theoretical threat than a practical one. That's good to know. But let's talk more about the benefits of Bitcoin. Besides security, what are some of the other advantages it offers over traditional payment systems? I'm particularly intrigued by this idea of a decentralized system.
One key advantage is censorship resistance. Because Bitcoin is decentralized, there's no single point of control. No government, bank, or corporation can freeze accounts or restrict access to the network.
So it's a financial system that exists outside the traditional power structures. That's a pretty radical concept.
It is. And this can be particularly empowering in regions with political instability or limited access to traditional banking services. Bitcoin can provide a way for individuals to control their own finances and escape the limitations of centralized systems.
It's like a financial lifeline for those who might otherwise be excluded from the global economy. That's incredibly powerful.
And another significant advantage is its global reach. Bitcoin can be sent anywhere in the world instantly, without the need for intermediaries or currency conversions.
So it's like having a universal currency that transcends borders and eliminates the friction of traditional financial systems.
Exactly. This can be a game changer for international remittances. Where traditional methods often involve high fees and long processing times, Bitcoin offers a much faster, cheaper, and more efficient way to send money across borders.
This is all incredibly exciting, but I'm also wondering about the potential downsides. What are some of the challenges that Bitcoin faces?
One challenge is scalability. As the network grows and the number of transactions increases, the blockchain can become congested. This can lead to slower transaction times and higher fees.
So it's like rush hour traffic on the blockchain highway.
That's a great analogy. And there are ongoing efforts within the Bitcoin community to address this. Various solutions are being proposed and implemented to enhance its scalability.
It sounds like Bitcoin is constantly evolving to meet the demands of its growing user base.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic technology with a vibrant community of developers constantly working to improve its scalability, security, and overall functionality.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into the inner workings of Bitcoin. We've gone from understanding its fundamental principles to exploring its potential impact on the future of finance.
We've only scratched the surface. The world of Bitcoin is vast and constantly evolving, but we've laid a solid foundation for understanding this revolutionary technology.
I'm already feeling a lot more confident navigating this digital landscape. But before we conclude this first part of our Bitcoin journey, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. If Bitcoin offers a more secure, transparent, and accessible financial system, what are the broader implications for society? How might this technology reshape the way we think about money, power, and control? We'll explore these questions and more in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Bitcoin. Last time, we explored the foundations of this revolutionary technology, from the ingenious proof-of-work system to the ever-growing blockchain. But Bitcoin is more than just a concept. It's a system designed for real-world use, and that's where things get really interesting. We've talked about how Bitcoin aims to address the limitations of traditional financial systems.
Right.
But how does it actually work in practice?
Right. Because let's be honest, most of us aren't going to be running our own Bitcoin nodes anytime soon. We need a way to use Bitcoin without becoming blockchain experts.
Absolutely. And that's where the concept of simplified payment verification, or SPV, comes into play. Remember, you don't need to run a full Bitcoin node to participate in the network.
Yeah, that was a huge relief to hear. But how does SPV actually work? How can you be sure a transaction is valid without having access to the entire blockchain?
It's all about efficiency. SPV allows users to verify transactions without having to download the entire blockchain, which, as you know, is massive and constantly growing. Instead of downloading every single transaction, SPV clients only need a smaller subset of data. The block headers.
Block headers, those were mentioned earlier, but remind me, what exactly are they?
Think of a block header as a summary of a block's contents. It includes essential information, like the block's unique identifier, a timestamp, and a special code called the Merkle root, which we touched upon in the last part.
Ah, yes, the Merkle root. That's where those Merkle trees come in. They help condense all the transaction data into a single value, right?
Exactly. The Merkle root acts as a fingerprint for all the transactions within a block. By checking this fingerprint, an SPV client can verify whether a specific transaction is included in a particular block, without having to examine all the transactions individually.
It's like having a condensed version of the blockchain's history, allowing you to trace a transaction back to its source without needing the full, unabridged ledger.
Precisely. And to be extra safe, SPV clients typically connect to multiple full nodes on the network. It's like getting a second opinion to confirm a diagnosis, ensuring they are getting a consistent and accurate view of the blockchain.
That makes sense. So, with SPV, everyday users can confidently participate in the Bitcoin network without the burden of running a full node. But what about this idea of the blockchain being this permanent, unchangeable record? Is it truly impossible to alter?
It's incredibly difficult,
Hmm.
but not entirely impossible. The security of the blockchain relies heavily on the longest chain rule and the immense computational power required to rewrite history.
Right. We talked about how anyone wanting to cheat the system would need more computing power than the entire rest of the network combined. It's like trying to swim upstream against a raging torrent.
Exactly. But there's a theoretical scenario, often referred to as a 51% attack, where if a single entity gained control of more than half of the network's computing power, they can potentially rewrite the blockchain.
So, it's like a hostile takeover of the entire Bitcoin network.
In a way, yes. A successful 51% attack could allow an attacker to double spend coins, reverse transactions, or even prevent new transactions from being confirmed. It would undermine the very foundations of Bitcoin security and trust.
That sounds pretty terrifying. How likely is something like that to actually happen?
While theoretically possible, a 51% attack is considered extremely unlikely, especially as the Bitcoin network grows larger and more decentralized. The cost and effort required to pull off such an attack would be astronomical, and the potential rewards would likely be dwarfed by the damage to Bitcoin's reputation and value. It's a bit like a bank robber spending millions to steal a few $1,000s.
So, it's a threat that needs to be acknowledged, but not one that should keep us up at night. That's reassuring. But let's shift gears for a moment. We've talked a lot about the technical aspects, but I'm curious about the real-world impact. Besides security, what are some of the tangible benefits that Bitcoin offers over traditional payment systems?
One of the most compelling benefits is censorship resistance. Because Bitcoin is decentralized, there's no single entity that can control or censor transactions. Governments, banks, or corporations can't freeze accounts or restrict access to the network.
It's a financial system that operates outside the control of traditional institutions and power structures?
Exactly. This can be particularly appealing to individuals living in regions with political instability, economic uncertainty, or limited access to financial services. Bitcoin can provide a way for them to control their own finances, protect their savings, and participate in the global economy without relying on intermediaries that might be unreliable or untrustworthy.
It's like a financial lifeline for those who might otherwise be excluded from or marginalized by the traditional financial system.
Precisely. And another significant advantage is its global reach. Bitcoin can be sent anywhere in the world instantly, without the need for intermediaries or currency conversions. This can streamline international trade and remittances, reducing costs and increasing efficiency.
That's huge, especially for those who rely on remittances to support their families back home. The current system can be incredibly slow and expensive, with a significant portion of the money lost in fees.
Exactly. Bitcoin offers a much more efficient and cost-effective way to send money across borders, putting more money directly into the hands of those who need it most. It's a powerful example of how technology can be used to bridge geographical and economic divides.
This is all incredibly exciting, but I think it's also important to acknowledge the potential downsides. Every new technology comes with its own set of challenges. What are some of the hurdles that Bitcoin faces as it continues to evolve?
One of the biggest challenges is scalability. As the network grows and the number of transactions increases, the blockchain can become congested, leading to slower transaction times and higher fees. It's like rush hour traffic on a digital highway.
So, as Bitcoin becomes more popular, there's a risk that it could become a victim of its own success.
That's one of the concerns. But the Bitcoin community is well aware of these challenges and is actively working on solutions to improve scalability. There are ongoing debates and experiments with various approaches, such as increasing block sizes, implementing second-layer solutions like the Lightning Network, and exploring alternative consensus mechanisms that are more energy efficient.
So, it's a dynamic and evolving technology.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes it so fascinating. It's a constant process of innovation and adaptation, driven by a passionate community of developers and users who believe in the transformative potential of this technology.
This has been a really insightful deep dive into the practical aspects of Bitcoin. We've explored how simplified payment verification makes it accessible to everyday users, discussed the theoretical threat of a 51% attack, and highlighted both the advantages and challenges of this revolutionary technology.
We've delved into the mechanics of how Bitcoin works in the real world, going beyond the theoretical and exploring its potential to impact the lives of individuals and shape the future of finance.
I'm already feeling a lot more confident navigating this digital landscape. But before we conclude this second part of our Bitcoin journey, I want to leave you with another question to ponder. If Bitcoin offers a more secure, transparent, and accessible financial system, what are the broader implications for society? How might this technology reshape the way we think about money, power, and control? We'll explore these questions and more in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've journeyed deep into the heart of Bitcoin, exploring its inner workings, its potential benefits, and the challenges it faces. But as we wrap up our exploration, I'm left with this lingering question. What does the rise of Bitcoin really mean for the future?
It's a question that has captivated technologists, economists,
Yeah.
and even philosophers. Bitcoin represents a fundamental shift in how we think about money and value, and its implications extend far beyond the realm of finance.
Yeah, it's almost like we're witnessing a paradigm shift in real time. What are some of the ways you see Bitcoin potentially disrupting traditional systems? Well, its decentralized nature is truly revolutionary. By removing the need for intermediaries, like banks and governments, Bitcoin empowers individuals to control their own finances in a way that was never before possible. This could lead to greater financial inclusion, particularly in regions where access to traditional banking services is limited.
That's an incredible thought, the idea that Bitcoin could empower those who have traditionally been excluded from the global financial system.
Exactly. It's about leveling the playing field and giving everyone an equal opportunity to participate in the global economy. And its borderless nature has the potential to transform international trade and remittances, making it easier and cheaper for people to send money across borders.
Imagine the impact that could have on families who rely on remittances to support their loved ones. It could be life-changing.
Absolutely. But it's not just about individual empowerment. Bitcoin also has the potential to challenge the very institutions that have traditionally controlled our financial systems.
I can imagine. Those institutions aren't exactly welcoming this disruption with open arms. How are they responding to the rise of Bitcoin?
Well, the reactions have been mixed. Some traditional institutions are embracing the technology, exploring ways to integrate Bitcoin and blockchain technology into their existing systems. They see the potential benefits and are eager to be a part of this innovation. Others, however, view Bitcoin as a threat to their power and dominance and are more resistant to change.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic, a bit like a tug of war between the old guard and the new wave of financial innovation.
That's a great way to put it. And the outcome of this struggle
Hmm.
will likely shape the future of finance for decades to come.
It's a truly exciting time to be witnessing this technological revolution unfold, but Bitcoin's impact goes far beyond just finance, doesn't it? What are some of the other potential applications of this technology that have you excited?
That's where things get really interesting. The underlying technology of Bitcoin, the blockchain,
Yeah.
has a vast array of potential applications. It can be used to create secure and transparent systems for everything from supply chain management and voting systems to digital identity and data storage.
Wow. So it's like a foundational technology that can be applied to a wide range of industries and systems.
Exactly. The blockchain's ability to create tamper-proof records and facilitate trust between parties has the potential to revolutionize countless aspects of our lives.
It's truly mind-boggling to think about the possibilities, but with any new technology, there are always concerns and potential downsides. What are some of the risks or challenges that you see with widespread blockchain adoption?
One concern is the potential for misuse. Like any powerful tool, the blockchain can be used for both good and bad purposes. It's important to be mindful of the ethical implications and to develop safeguards to prevent its use for illicit activities.
So it's important to proceed with caution
Yeah,
and to think critically about the potential unintended consequences.
absolutely. Another challenge is regulatory uncertainty. Governments around the world are still grappling with how to classify and regulate Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. This lack of clarity can create hurdles for businesses and individuals operating in this space.
It's a bit like navigating uncharted territory. The rules of the game are still being written.
Exactly. And this regulatory uncertainty can stifle innovation and slow down the adoption of blockchain technology.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've explored the intricate details of how Bitcoin works, discussed its potential benefits and challenges, and even pondered its broader societal implications.
It's been a fascinating exploration, and I hope our listeners are leaving with a deeper understanding of this revolutionary technology.
We've only just scratched the surface, but you've given us a lot to think about. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Bitcoin, what's the one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I encourage everyone to approach Bitcoin and blockchain technology with an open mind and a healthy dose of critical thinking. Read the original white paper, explore different perspectives, and form your own conclusions. This is a dynamic and evolving field, and it's essential to stay informed, engaged, and curious. The future of finance, and perhaps much more, is being shaped right before our eyes.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been a truly enlightening experience.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listeners, remember that the world of Bitcoin is constantly evolving. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.